Hey everybody, AJ with AJ's Vintage Designs here, and I'm redoing my office. Now right now my office has a very masculine feel. The desk is pretty much speaks for all. So I'm going to be redoing this desk and giving it more of my vibe, adding some pops of color, layers of colors, and I'm also going to be painting on another video the leather chair that goes with. So we're going to have some fun. Now the first step to redoing a piece like this is you need to thoroughly clean it. I clean mine with White Lightning, Dixie Belle's White Lightning. I mix it in a bottle with some warm water, and I always like to use some type of scrubby pad, whether it be like an SOS pad, a sandpaper, steel wool, or a scouring pad. Either way, I want to get that grime and grease and that built up cleaner that we've been using for years off the piece before I start painting. So I'm going to go ahead, I've already sprayed it down and cleaned it because that took quite a while with this piece. So I sprayed it down, but then after you clean it, you need to make sure that you give it a thorough rinse. You want to remove any of that dirt residue, that cleaning residue, because your paint will be adhering to the residue and not your furniture piece. So always make sure that you rinse your cleaner off. I don't care what kind of cleaner you use. You want to make sure that you're rinsing that cleaner off before you start painting. So mine's all clean. I just have to give it a rinse, and then we'll start on to the next step. Another tip, you're going to see that I'm not taping any of that glass off. I'm actually going to be using Terra clay paint by Dixie Belle. Now the clay paint reactivates with water until it's been sealed. So I don't have to tape my glass off, because when I'm done painting, all I need to do is take a baby wipe and take that paint right off my glass. So that is one of the tips to save some time, is if you're using Terra clay paint, you don't have to tape off your glass, your mirrors, any of that kind of stuff, because it reactivates so well with water, you're able to take it right off. So, okay, let's head on to the next step. Okay, now that I have it all cleaned and rinsed and I took the hardware off, can you see the shine that's on here? I don't want to have to use an adhesion primer. So I'm just going to take a sanding sponge. This is about equivalent to a 220 grit sandpaper. And I'm going to give the entire piece a slight scuff sand to knock some of that gloss off. Now I am using clay paint, so usually you don't need to use all these precautions when you're using clay paint. But I'd rather be safe than sorry. If there's any area that's extremely glossy and it gets hit by something, I want to make sure that my paint is going to stay put. So I'm just going to give it a slight scuff sand. Just wiping this 220 grit paper around it. And I'm over here, you can definitely see that I'm knocking that gloss off. Doesn't take much, just take a few seconds. Just wipe it, almost like you're cleaning it, with a piece of sandpaper. So I'm going to do this to the entire piece to knock that gloss off, and then I'm going to wipe it with a damp rag to get all the sanding residue off here. But it will knock some of that gloss off, and it gives the paint a chance to actually grab and adhere to the surface. It gives it some tooth. So I'm just going to give it a slight scuff sand. If you're going with a distressed look and you're not worried about if it gets banged and maybe there's an area that's too slick and it didn't adhere and it might chip, if you're not worried about that, you don't have to do this step. If you are worried about having a complete adhesion, then you could put a bonding primer on first, which I would be using Dixie Belle Slick Stick. But this is a huge piece. I don't want to have to slick stick all of it. So I'm just gonna give it a quick scuff sand. This is normally what I do with kitchen cabinets as well. Give it a scuff sand. I'm not trying to take any finish off. I'm just scratching up that surface just a little bit to give it some tooth for when the paint goes on. So let me go ahead and give this all a scuff sand, and then I'm going to come back and we'll start painting it. Okay, now I got a little bit better angle, and I'm going to show you these base colors on the front. So once again, I'm using London Blue and Cerulean Blue, okay? Getting a base coat of that London Blue around all of my details. Not worried about brush strokes. I could just paint the whole drawer. It might be easier to do it that way. And just put the other blue over it. Okay, now I'm gonna come in with the Cerulean Blue using the same exact brush. Okay, so now let's add some color to this. This is the base coat. This is the Cerulean Blue and the London Blue. And what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna mist it with some water. One drawer at a time. And I'm gonna be using the Bougainvillea. And I'm just going to wipe some of this pink over this blue in those wet areas. If I wanted it more to be a dry brush look, then I would not have sprayed it with some water, and it would have given me more of a dry brush look. Okay, see I'm adding that on there. And see how it also darkens the blue when I get it wet? You'll see right here. It darkens the blue. The more water you use, the more it's going to reactivate. So if I use too much water, I will be reactivating that blue and actually reactivating it down to the furniture piece, so it would actually look more distressed because it would show the furniture piece underneath. So I'm just gently getting this pink on. I will be coming back over it, I think, with the blues again, but I want this to be more of a layered look, and I want pops of color. And like I said, you know, my husband came in and he liked just the blue. But, you know, what fun is that when, you know, you want to be able to play? So I'm doing some layers of color. Dry brushing that pink over all this detail. Dry brushing some pink up into here. Just using what's left up on my brush. Just getting those colors on. I do want some distressing, so I'm not worried about if my furniture shows through, because I really want this to be a layered, kind of a Moroccan feel. Some more pink up here. And you can reactivate this paint at any time. If I need to take a break, I could stop, come back in a couple hours and do the same thing. With this little pillar here. And adding this Bougainvillea. Then I'm gonna come back in and I'm going to be adding the daffodil. Once again, I just barely dip my brush in the paint. Barely. I barely tap any of the paint on. I tap it off on a plate so I don't have a lot of paint on here. And I drag some of that yellow over this pink. See, I'm getting that yellow in there too. This is a playful paint. The clay paint is, you get to play, and it's very forgiving. All I have to do is add water, and I can blend this right back out. The more water you add, the wetter each layer gets, and the farther down you're able to reblend or to distress. Isn't that going to be pretty? See, I can see that pops of yellow. Use what's left of my brush and dry brush it over this detail. Bring that detail out. Just grabbing some yellow. Just kind of dry brushing what's left on my brush over some of these areas, just to get some pops of yellow in here. I'm gonna come back with the blues and do the same technique, adding some dry brushing of the blues. Adding the dry brushing of the blues so that I can get more blue back in. Now I'm taking a dry brush. It's a clean dry brush, and I'm just kind of blending these colors together so they're not so dry brush looking while it's still wet. If it started to dry, I just mist it with some water to reactivate it and blend these colors a little bit better. So I'm just taking this little dry brush over these colors and just kind of blending them. This has gotten kind of dry right here, so it's more of a dry brush look. So I just mist it with some water, and I can soften these lines. Okay, so that's what I'm gonna do, and then we'll come back and do the next layer after this is dried. Okay, so I have that first coat of blues that I had on, and then I came back and added the bougainvillea and the daffodil, which is the pink and the yellow. It's all dried. It's been a couple days. Usually you just want to let it dry for at least 2 to 4 hours before you do the next coat. Now I'm coming back in with my blues. So all these bright, pretty colors, even though I think it's pretty right now, all these bright, pretty colors are going to be toned down. So I'm going back to the cerulean blue, and I have my premium chip brush, and I've got my water. Okay, so I'm going to be toning this down. Look at how when it gets wet, it changes colors. See how it changes colors? And I'm going to tap into my cerulean blue. Get my plate here to tap it off if I get too much. I don't want to apply too much. And where it's wet, I'm just going to drag that blue back over it, just to tone down that pink, because I want this piece to be primarily blue with the pink just popping through. Okay, so just gently getting that blue on there, dragging that across, just kind of hiding that pink just a little bit. You can leave it that dry brush look, and when it dries, it kind of looks more layered, or you can take a clean brush, mist it again a little bit, and use a clean brush just to help blend it out and kind of soften it a little bit. Still shows that pink and that yellow through it, but I'm just kind of spreading it out with that clean brush. And I have a paper towel nearby where I can wipe my brush off if it gets a little dirty, but see how my pink is going to show through. And you'll see as soon as it dries. You gotta kind of trust the clay paint. When it's wet, it is slightly different than it is when it dries. So you just mist it with some water, take that clean brush, and just work it out. The more you rub with your brush, the farther down you're going to be reactivating the colors underneath. So just know if you don't want to react too far down through the layers of colors, you're just more gentle with your brush and you use less water. Okay, so I'm just going to keep repeating that process. See how that toned it down from this to this, but I can still see hints of pink. I like the pink here, so I'm going to be leaving it on the details, but everything else is going to be getting the blue. So let's do one more drawer. Just so I can show you how that works. Once again, get it wet. That reactivates that paint. And keep my dry brush separate. Tap into my cerulean blue. That actually is pretty when it's dark. But I'm going to just lightly get a little bit of that cerulean blue on here over that water. Very gently, not a lot of paint. Okay, we want that old Mediterranean door layered look is what we're going for. Okay, now I'm gonna take my clean brush and my paper towel. I'm gonna wipe off my brush a little bit. And I'm just going to now spread that blue out. And if I don't see enough of my pink, and I have too much blue on there, then I will add more water and kind of work that blue a little bit off of the piece, showing areas of the pink and the yellow. Okay, maybe I want to show a little bit more pink here, so I'm just adding a little water and try to get that blue spread out. But if I work it too much, I'm going to work past the pink and back down to my furniture piece. If you want to lock in a particular layer where you don't want it to distress back, or you don't want that paint to move, you want it to peek through, I could go and clear coat all of this. This would be locked in, and then I could do a wash of that blue over it. I could do that as well. But, so just gently fanning it out with the dry brush, making sure I can still see some of my pinks and my yellows through it. I want it to look aged and layered. Okay, let's show you kind of on a bigger area. This is one of the sides, and we're gonna do the same process. Wherever I'm gonna be adding the blue, I'm gonna add some water. And I'm going to go ahead and dip into my cerulean blue, and where it's wet, I'm just gonna drag those colors across. You can probably see it a little bit better how I'm just almost like dry brushing, but the area is wet. bring some of that blue here in the center. I'm only putting it where I have the water right now. And the more you work your paint, especially when it's wet, the more you take the risk of activating all the layers underneath it. Okay, so now I'm going to take my dry brush and I'm going to feather out so it's not always that dry brush look. And if you get an area that doesn't move, then you just mist it with a little bit of water and it reactivates it again. Just rubbing it until I get that worn look that I'm looking for. Right there. So I got that blue to tone it down. Okay, final step. You can see the pink, a little bit of pink showing through here and the yellow, but blue is my primary color. And check out the color it is right now. This is the dry clay paint. I'm gonna put Satin Clear Coat from Dixie Belle on top. This is a water-based clear coat. When it comes to a water-based clear coat, I have several layers on here. So, you know, I can work my paint a little bit and it's gonna be good. If I only had one layer of clay paint and I worked it with this water-based clear coat, I do risk pulling it back to the furniture piece because I don't have that many layers. But I do, I have 3 layers on here. I do have some of my furniture showing through because I wanted that distressed look. But I'm just gonna apply the water-based clear coat. Get it on, moving fairly quickly because the longer you have it on, the more it's soaking through the paint. And I don't want it to distress. So I'm moving quickly, not really overworking it, being nice and gentle. But as you can see, it changes the color of the paint when it's wet, but it will go back to the color it was before, just a little bit darker. When it's dry and not sealed, it is a lighter color. Long strokes. Sorry for the noise, there we go. Make sure I get, you can tell where you've applied it because you will see the color change. You don't want to leave any of it unsealed because it is reactivated with water. So, you know, if you don't seal it and you clean a piece, you know, and you clean it with water, you do risk moving your paint because this is reactivated by water. But once you seal it, the paint it's permanent. It's locked in place and it's not going to go anywhere. Okay, there we go. See how the color changes? And I'm going to be showing you, I have one cabinet door that I'm going to show you that is not sealed right next to a piece that has been sealed and dried. So I will show you that just so you can see the difference of what it's going to look like when it's dry compared to what it looks like dry and unsealed. Okay. And as you can see, I'm just moving quickly, paying attention to everywhere that I've got a coat of sealer on here. I will personally be, I'm going to be sealing this with at least 2, if not 3 coats of sealer. I want that nice glossy, not glossy, but a nice smooth finish to it. I don't want it to feel like clay paint. So I will be putting several coats of sealer over it. You can use the oil-based wax when it becomes available. But this size of a piece, I do have tennis elbow, and so this size of a piece is too difficult for me to wax, but otherwise I would be using the oil-based wax, but my elbow won't hold up for that, doing the application. Buffing is easy, it's the application that is too hard on my elbow. So I like to use the clear coats. You can also use the gator hide, which is the water repellent sealer, and if I did that, I would be doing less coats. I might put a coat of gator hide over this satin just for that extra durability because my desk, my chair is going to be bumping into this. Vacuum cleaners will be bumping into this. It'll be open and shut with me getting files in and out. This is my own personal office desk. But there we go. All sealed. Okay, and then when it comes to, remember I painted and I didn't worry about paint getting on my glass? Since the paint can be reactivated, I'm just going to dip my little craft brush in some water and I'm going to take that craft brush right along all that trim with that water. Get right up into that crack up there. And I'm just going to wipe it with the craft brush. Because this is reactivated by water, it makes it so easy to do windows like this. Okay, so I wiped it. Now that I wiped it, I need to take a dry paper towel and remove that water. And there we go. So I can go from this with all that paint inside to that within a matter of seconds. Okay, well there you have it. All done. I'm already using her. I absolutely love it. I love seeing the pink and the yellow popping through the blue. This was an easy project to do using the Dixie Belle Terra clay paint, and that's about it. So I'll have pictures at the end right after this so you can see it close up, and I'll definitely be doing this look again. I'm in love with it. So I'm Amy with AJ's Vintage Designs. Make sure you click on subscribe down below and that little bell so you're notified each and every time I put up a new video. And until next time, I hope you have a great day.